This program is a rebroadcast of the Community Technology Summit for the West Morris Regional High School District, originally simulcast live on Mendham TV and the World Wide Web on March 21st, 2013.
Welcome to our first annual Community Tech Forum, titled Igniting Innovators in a World of Mobilism. And so I want to start off with just something that's in your folder. I don't know if you had a chance to look at this. How many people here know what a Wordle is? In our pre-event survey, we asked a question, and we've had about 300 or so responses from families within the community, and we're shooting for 1,000 students, 1,000 families. But we asked a simple question, which was, what does innovation mean to you? And then we took those answers and we put it in a Wordle. If you don't know what a Wordle is, it's a simple algorithm that's wordle.net on the web, I believe. And we took all the answers and we put it in there, and it comes up with this graphic. And what it does is it shows you the words that came up the most to that question. And we found it really very interesting. If you look at it, it says forward-thinking, creative, better, change, creativity. But the biggest word, which means it showed up the most, is something. So that's what tonight is about. It's about something. I taught for 15 years and we're supposed to be clear, but that's what tonight is about. So there's great change in the world. And that's what makes our job so intriguing. That's what makes all of this so intriguing, is we don't necessarily have a decent feel for that change. And that's what tonight is about, is to explore that change. Let me just talk about some things that I've been talking about within the district at board meetings and parent groups. A question I like to ask, which usually gets somewhat of a surprising response, is the graduates from which two New Jersey schools earn more money than the graduates of Harvard? And so one is pretty simple or easy. That's Princeton, not to insult anybody. But the second one usually brings a little bit of a surprise response, and that's Stevens Tech. And if you look at this, it's one of those things that's on cnnmoney.com. But if you look at those schools that dominate the early part of that list, they're technology schools, they're engineering schools, and they're schools that are devoted and have majors in entrepreneurialism and innovation. I think that's something for us to look at and learn from. Certainly, college experience is not just a merely utilitarian function of how much you're going to make. There's much more to it, but I think we can learn something from that. There's other things. I see a lot of you with tablets, and I have one up here as well. And I talk about this often. And one statistic that I read said that 70 million tablets were sold this year between iPad and Kindle and Samsung and so forth. But they expect in the next 2.5 years, 650 million to be sold. So again, there's this wave, this mobilism wave, and it's changing everything. I don't think I'm the first to say that. Certainly education, but also our economy and so many other ways. So what does that mean for us in a high school education? Our job is to prepare our children, these students, for life and the next academic challenge. What does this mean? Well, it means something. It means something, and that's what we're exploring. Also in our pre-event survey, about, 20% of our parents said that within their household, there were 11 to 15 mobile devices. So again, that shows you how this wave is hitting. And we heard an interesting comment the other day. Someone said, this technology, which is so strong and impressive, when I don't look at this tablet, it can't see my eyes, it turns off. When I look at it, it turns back on. I mean, these are just, we hear about this type of, that might be a silly example. We hear about this type of technology, the dramatic changes that are taking place. It's so impressive. However, it's the worst technology our children will ever have, right? It's just going to keep getting better and better exponentially. Well, that must have an impact for a high school education. What do we need to teach our children so that they're used to this change that's going to be constant and taking place? Well, that's what tonight is about. And of course, I think in this district we have much to be proud of. There's so many good things that have taken place and are taking place. We see over 5 years, both Central and Mendham High School with the most improved reading and writing standardized test scores in the state of New Jersey. We're proud of that. We have great, kids are getting into better and better colleges. We have great athletic teams. We have the state champion mock trial team. We have tremendous art, talent, music, and art. Kids are winning awards constantly. Last weekend, we saw 2 tremendous theatrical productions at both schools. And just there's so much to be proud of. We don't have to the reset button. We don't have to press the reset button. There's so much there, such great improvement. And I think some of these things you only see in a brick and mortar school. You're not going to necessarily have that qualitative total experience that you might get if it's just purely online. So a lot to be proud of. And just within this last year, we've restructured our administration, creating a new position of supervisor of technology integration. We've restructured and overhauled our curriculum. We've restructured and overhauled our supervision and evaluation. We're restructuring our technology platforms, adopting Google Apps for education, and restructuring our technology and bandwidth within the building. All good. A district of action. We don't need to press reset. Maybe we do. Right? Something. That's what tonight is about. Maybe we do. Maybe we have to press reset. And I think that's something we have to keep in mind. We do know something for sure, that the standard today, it's an international standard. That our students, when they leave, they will have to compete on an international basis. That is something we know for sure. And that also gives us confidence. We have an international baccalaureate program where our students have been competing. At least we can measure their success against the success of students in Dubai and Shanghai and other places throughout the world. We've been doing that for 15 years. So that gives us great confidence. We feel we're uniquely positioned to lead the state or the nation in that international benchmark. We have the methods and the processes in place. So we don't need to press reset. But maybe we do. But maybe we do. It's a great quote from American humorist Will Rogers, who once said, even if you're sitting on the right track, you better get up and move sometimes, or you might get run over. So we don't want that. I taught history for 15 years. David McCullough, a great American storyteller and historian, talking about George Washington, he said one of the reasons why he was so great, he stands almost as a singular solitary figure of greatness. He said, why was he so great? And his conclusion was because Washington could see things exactly as they are, not as he wanted them to be. All right, there's a difference. Are we seeing things exactly as they are? Washington's example is a great example for us. I think it's a mindset that requires humility about what we're doing. And it's easy for us. We want to prepare our students for their future, not our past. And it's easy for us to hang on to that past. And I think tonight is about exploring that something. So we're very proud. I think it says so much that such an audience is here to explore this together. It's critical for us to explore this as a community and to make decisions and move forward in profound ways. We all feel very strongly in the high school that we are stewards really of a great public trust. And what is more important than preparing students for life? It energizes us and it empowers us, but it's also a humbling position of responsibility for us. We've worked hard on a vision of a graduate, which is in that folder as well, where we want our students to graduate and be leaders in the world. We want the next Steve Jobs to come from this school district, or J.K. Rowling, or whoever else is making a difference in their fields. And that's important to us. We want to empower students with great skills and knowledge and calculus and history and literature, but also the mindset that leads to those kinds of achievements. Innovation, creativity, principled, an understanding of principle and balance, and risk takers. These are things that we're striving for in the district So welcome again to our first annual Community Tech Forum, and let's begin. We have such distinguished guests and community members. We're so lucky to have them here. Our first speaker, Bill Davidson, is a Senior Vice President of Global Marketing and Investor Relations at Qualcomm. In this role, Mr. Davidson has provided leadership for Qualcomm's marketing, investor relations, and public relations efforts worldwide. Prior to that, he was Vice President of Carrier Relations for Qualcomm Internet Services. He's worked closely with wireless service providers throughout the world to establish business opportunities based on Qualcomm's wireless data technology. In addition to being regularly quoted, you might see him in expert industry publications. He's appeared on CNBC's The Edge and the Weekly Business Report for PBS. He's been recently guest speaker at Boston University, Harvard University, the Wharton School of Business. Please welcome Bill Davidson.
It's an honor to be back here. We moved to Mendham on March 16th, 1973, when I was in second grade. We came here from Short Hills. And I was telling the story before, a little earlier, that when we moved here, we lived in Oak Knoll. And in those days, it took an hour and 15 minutes by bus, because I think there were only two of them in town, to get from Oak Knoll to the Brookside Elementary School. Corey Lane wasn't paved. I remember driving across the gravel there, and we lived on Northgate Road, and 2 houses up from us, Northgate Road was a dirt road, so quite a different town at that point in time. I have 3 older sisters. My oldest sister was a senior in high school when we moved here, so she actually commuted back to Millburn for the final few months. But then my sister Janet went here, my sister Lori went here, who still lives in town, Lori Burke. I'm prepared for your booze, but I dissented and went to Del Barton. So I did not come to Mendham High, but I was at the Brookside Elementary School and the middle school. I was talking to Mackie earlier. My understanding is the governor who was invited couldn't come. I'm happy to stand in as his stunt double. The people in San Diego think that there's a machine in New Jersey that just punches people out that look very similar. And so I can't tell you how many copies of the Time magazine that had the governor on the front page of I got delivered to my office in San Diego. We moved to San Diego 11 years ago. My journey took me from New Jersey to Boston to Connecticut to San Diego. I worked for New Jersey Bell and then went to Bell Atlantic Mobile. We merged with 9X. It took me to Boston. Got to Connecticut with GE Capital. Actually made a horrific commute from Ridgefield, Connecticut to Bedminster, New Jersey every day for a year and a half when Bell Atlantic asked me back. And then I went to a startup, commuted to Maryland for a couple of years, and then we moved to San Diego 11 years ago. So people always ask me, what do I miss? Well, I obviously miss family and friends. I miss the Giants, the Yankees, the Rangers, and the Knicks, and I miss Taylor Ham. It's just a tremendous honor to be asked to be here. I haven't been in this auditorium since about 1979, and it's incredibly familiar still. So I wanted to just take you through who is Qualcomm, and then really entice the students in the room to, I'd love for you to come to work for us, but you got to study engineering or computer science mostly to do that. I was very fortunate. I thought I wanted to be an engineer. I had an internship at Bell Labs in Homedale, New Jersey, the senior year in high school. I worked in the Undersea Systems Lab. I actually elected not to pursue a career in engineering, and now I work for a company that is dominated by engineers, and I was a marketing guy. So my message to you is, I'll never run the company I work for because I'm not an engineer, and now kind of looking back on it, I wish that was the path I pursued. So I'm going to encourage the students in the room to do so. So my hope leaving here today is that you know a little bit more about who Qualcomm is and that I entice you to come work for us. So how many people know anything about Qualcomm? And you won't offend me. Exactly. This is what we get everywhere. So you might know us. We have the San Diego Chargers play in Qualcomm Stadium. For those of you who remember, it's Jack Murphy Field, now at Qualcomm Stadium. Some of the older people in the room, you might have had a phone back in time that was made by Qualcomm, or even more recently, there's this little clear sticker that would wear off after the battery heated up for about a week that said 3G CDMA from Qualcomm. Anybody ever watch Ice Road Truckers? You're disclosing a lot by raising your hand, but yeah. So we have the in-cab system. What started the company was satellite-based tracking of long-haul trucking. And so you'll hear the characters on that show say that their Qualcomm is chirping at them. And that little bubble you see on top of that van there, I encourage you now, you'll see one on every 18-wheeler, and they're on the assets that we have on the battlefield so they can be tracked. And then finally, when you go down to the Bridgewater Mall, you might see this building there with this blue Qualcomm on it and wonder who we are. So I'm going to clear that up. We've been in existence for more than 25 years. We've been focused on mobile from the outset. We invented 3G. Everybody hear of 3G and 4G technology? So we were the company that came along with a different idea on how to provide more capacity on wireless networks and enable better services like the data services you enjoy today. We actually are the #1 chipset provider into handsets. I can, based on the fact that we're sitting here in North America, guarantee that every one of you in this audience has some Qualcomm silicon in your handset. So we are not a consumer brand. We're very happy to not be a consumer brand. We stand behind others. Google is a great partner of ours, as a matter of fact. So we're not really very well known. But I want to just start off with a video to take you on a bit of a tour around the world, because what I really hope to appeal to, and there's kind of a punchline to this at the end, is that wireless is really much more than just having this cool phone in your hand that you can text from and web browse and decreasingly talk on. But that we're actually seeing some pretty dramatic societal changes occur around the world as we're empowering people with communications. So let me roll the video quickly.
So quickly, it's like we have to get stuff done, and if you can't communicate at any time of the day, I mean, you're not going to be able to do what you need to do. Usually the first thing I do in the morning, I'll hop online and I'll actually connect with my development team out in the Ukraine, and we work on whatever video game project we have going on. We've been playing in a band, we'll get together, we'll rehearse. Usually, one of us will record some stuff on our phone or, our tablet, we'll bring it in. Being able to sit anywhere and hum something into a phone or, into a tablet and be able to come back and share it with each other wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't be producing half the stuff I'm working on if we didn't have these devices.
My grandfather and my father were fishermen. They used to be totally dependent on nature, keeping an eye on the position of the sun and tracking the moon at night. Now, this cell phone gives us important information like weather, wave heights, wind speed and direction, as well as coordinates we need to find the right places. The results are amazing. If all of our fishermen had mobile phones like these, I really think our community would grow, and I think our people would have better lives.
I used to be sick a lot. I had trouble breathing. I would have blackouts. I couldn't do anything physical. I just couldn't have a normal life. My doctor ran tests and discovered that I had a heart problem. So he gave me a special wristband. It takes pictures of my heartbeat. Then my phone sends the info to the medical center. And if I have a problem with my heart, the doctor from the call center will call me right away. I now have more control over my life.
I use the tablet a lot for studying. It is a little smaller than the book. We use tablets to chat with each other, I still use it for fun and everything. It can make the study very efficient, so I can learn lots of things in little time. It's really impressive. Well, sometimes I put some music so I can read it while I'm playing without using, paper. Maybe I will be a musician when I grow up.
My name is He Fang, and I live in Beijing, China.
I'm Josh Shabtai. I'm a creative director here in New York.
My name is Adriano. I have 15 years old and live in São Paulo.
My name is Panier Selvan. I live in a village called Veerampattinam, and I'm a fisherman.
Thank you. Those are all real stories. Actually, a guy on my team who does the video work for us went out in market, and we found all these people, how they were using mobile. So, again, the point is it's more than just about having music handy and being able to web browse. Now, what we hope you know about us is we make the chipsets that power your phone. And what's inside your phone actually does matter. So we now, based on our current course and speed, ship about 1.5 million chipsets a day into the marketplace. So it's just absolutely incredible what we've seen happen with our business. And Snapdragon is our flagship applications processor that, again, I guarantee many of you have in your phone. Just take a minute to talk about our business model because we did something actually pretty amazing, and it was by accident. So if you go back to the beginning of the company, we came along with this idea. Our founder was a professor at MIT. And when UCSD, University of California at San Diego, was building out their campus, they enticed him to come to California in the late 60s. And so he had this idea on how to get more capacity out of the network. So back in the old days, for those of us who remember, you'd have your analog cell phone. You wouldn't dare leave it on because it cost a fortune to take a call, and also the battery would die. You'd have those times where you'd get that hard handoff and the call would just disappear. The quality of the call would degrade until you hand it to the next cell. So digital came along to solve a lot of that. So the wireless industry had largely settled on the digital standard to move us from analog to digital communications and wireless, and it was going to triple the capacity on the networks. Because remember, there was a famous McKinsey study done in 1980 where McKinsey said that by the year 2000, there would be approximately 900,000 cell phones in the United States. They were off by 108.1 million. There were 109 million phones by the year 2000. So the point is the industry grew much more rapidly than anybody expected. So we had to get more capacity. Our company came along with a different idea. And pretty unkind things were said. It was during the bubble, and we were accused of selling vaporware. Our founder was actually called a crackpot on one occasion. And that's important context because we had to develop all this technology ourselves. So we went off and I think our founders would tell you got past the point of them mortgaging their homes to try to keep this great idea going and alive. We had bought this business OmniTrax, which was the satellite tracking I showed you. That was providing the cash flow for the research and development. But eventually that proved to not be enough. So at the time, we had approximately 50 patents that we had been either in the process of being granted or applied for. So a couple of guys in the legal department said, well, maybe we could go out and generate some licensing revenue on those patents. So we approached the first potential licensees from the ecosystem, and I think they handicapped our chances at very low for success, and they also knew we were the only ones working on it, so they said, we don't ever want to deal with you again on patents, so just license them all to us. That was the grand birth of what has now become what we believe is one of the most widely licensed patent portfolios in the world. We stopped counting when we reached 84,000 patents filed globally. And so what we were able to do was, you think about how most companies use patents, it's to protect their own inventions, right? I get a patent on something, it means I have protection to go off and make a product around it and nobody else can. Well, what we are now is an aggregation of research and development for our industry because we license our patents to everyone. We have more than 225 licensees for our patent portfolio, and they now can all manufacture around this great wireless standard. Prior to us coming into existence, there were 3 large companies that controlled the IP and the entire manufacturing chain. And not because they did anything wrong, but that was the scale that was required to be able to do all that work. So now we take on that scale for the industry, and we pass our inventions out through our licensing program. So an amazingly innovative model that was not in the business plan for how to capitalize Qualcomm. And now our patents are licensed perpetually. We've never raised the price that we've charged despite adding all those new patents into the pool. And so our license agreements generally renew for the life of the most recently used patent. It's a story that I actually don't think is told enough in this country, and it's also not included in GDP as an export, but we are receiving royalties from companies that are based in China and all over Southeast Asia and Japan. So the technology was invented here, And thankfully in our industry, a nice piece of the cash flow comes back to the United States. Again, I think thanks to this business model. And then I mentioned the chipsets. That's the path for our technology to get to market. Our R&D investment last year was $4 billion. And Qualcomm is 26,000 employees approximately when we last disclosed it in the 10K. Some of the devices that we're in, if anybody has a Kindle and you have more than Wi-Fi, that first generation when it came out, people didn't realize, but that was our chip in there, enabling the downloading of the books over the air. We've had chips that we designed to go into low-end phones in India now come back into remote meter reading applications in the United States. If you have a General Motors car and you have OnStar, that is our chipset enabling that communication. So I love the comment now about how many different devices are in the house. I always say, look at the number of IP addresses you now have in your home today compared to just 5 years ago. And if we do our job right, I think the way that my kids, I have a 19-year-old and a 16-year-old, and when I tell them that I didn't have a VCR growing up, which they barely know what that is anymore, and that I didn't have a game console, you're all going to be telling your kids that your parents built this thing in your house called a home office. And I think your kids are going to look and say, you had to build a room in your house to go sit by a computer. You just didn't do it everywhere, and it wasn't integrated into your life. And that's where we're headed. Hopefully you'll reform the home office as another bedroom from a square footage standpoint. But we just see that the trend is for everything to be connected, and everything when it's connected will be better and more useful. We lead the semiconductor industry. I won't read it, but across the board, whether it's an apps processor, graphics, digital signal processing, radio frequency, and in the wide area technologies, we're just number one across the board. This is our leadership in devices, so more than 85 manufacturers, 770 designs announced, and more than 550 more coming. That's the scale that our business enjoys. And the neat thing for me is to see the range of devices now. We saw the first TVs, smart televisions come out based on our Snapdragon chipset. So now you're going to be able to walk up to your television. It's going to have a front-facing camera. It's going to recognize it's you, and it's going to automatically tile all the stuff that you've recorded in the DVR rather than you having to pound through that horrible UI that still exists there. So the possibilities that we're going to be able to achieve are just limitless. And what's been also fascinating is that emerging regions really aren't that different. And actually, I'd submit to you, if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense because here, most people have a computer at home, multiple computers at home. We have computers at work. We have computers in our school districts. But when you go somewhere like India or China, the penetration is very low. So the only computer a lot of these people will ever have will be their phone. The only digital photo they will ever take will come from their phone. The only digital video they ever capture will be on their phone. It is their main device. It is their computer. It is their communications link. It is their voice telephone. So mobile data traffic, this tsunami of wireless data, as we like to call it. How many of you now look at your phone more than you talk into it? How many of you never talked into it more than you looked at it? Right? And your screen is, by the way, what uses the most battery. So we're trying to work on that as well to get that all-day battery life that we all strive for. But we've seen this doubling of global data traffic growth from 2010 to 2011. We're preparing for 1,000 times over the next 10 years. And there are going to be some creative ways that we're going to achieve that. One of which has been LTE or 4G that's been rolled out. They're giving the operators bigger pieces of spectrum so that phones have, I guess, what I'll call a wider highway to travel down. But that's only going to be a solution for part of the problem. And so, whenever I speak, I always say that if Bell and Edison showed up to a town today and said they were going to drop down a couple thousand creosote-soaked tree trunks and string wires from them, we would not have widespread electricity in the telephone based on people fighting it. And so I really encourage people when I speak on this to think about where the world is headed as it relates to computing and what you won't be able to take advantage of if you don't figure out a way to get these services in. And what's happened over the years is we've had to add more cell sites not to have coverage, but to have capacity. We have to keep making the cells smaller and smaller because we have more traffic coming through each individual cell. So even though it might have the capability to cover a much wider area, we have to tighten that in dramatically based on how much we all use our devices. So the model forever has been put up a big tower, try to broadcast the signal out, put more of them so that we could get in building coverage. But where we're headed is more of an inside-out model. So imagine that we can get the cost of a cell site down 1,000 times or more so that it will cost less than a telephone, and it's going to be in your house rather than this big thing sitting outside. So the same way, how many have Wi-Fi in their house today? So our vision is you'll have cellular one day right along, probably with that same box. And what we get there is we don't have to put as many of the big antennas outside. They'll be much lower power. They'll use frequency bands that to date have been unusable because the signal propagation characteristics, the higher you get up in the bands, the shorter it goes. That's actually helpful in this scenario because it reduces interference. And it'll be using your backhaul. It'll use your broadband connection. So it is going to radically change the economics. Because I look at it as the operator pricing today still doesn't let me use as much data as I'd like to use. I still have to think about it, and our goal is for you not to have to think about it. So what we see is an internet of everything. And these are some of the key areas that we're focused, whether it's automotive, industrial with smart grid. You know, a great example, 3 electric vehicles equals another house in a neighborhood. Or I come to your house for dinner, and I'm driving an electric car, I guess, and this is a California thing, there are tons of them there. But I come to your house, you invited me for dinner, but not to plug into your electricity and use your electricity. So maybe wireless is the way that it knows it's my car, and therefore we'll put it on my electric bill rather than yours when I come see you. For health and fitness, which I'm going to talk about in a second, and all the home applications. And speaking of which, the demands on home networks are predicted to triple by 2016 based on everything we're doing with media today in our homes and data connectivity. So the great thing is we've assembled a set of technologies under one roof to take care of all of it, whether it's wireless all the way over to the wired side with the set of products that our silicon finds itself in. I want to cover one interesting topic, augmented reality. And probably the first example you all had for it was the first down line in football. Or remember they did the blue dot for hockey for like 1 year and it was horrible, absolutely horrible, so they dropped it. But what that was, you're overlaying digital content on the physical world. And when you think about your phone, the fact that your phone has a camera and it can become a viewfinder for the physical world, we're going to start overlaying digital content into the physical world. And what we say is we're going to make the world clickable. So I'll give you an example. So I point my phone at that cereal box of Honey Nut Cheerios and out comes the honeybee. And he might be talking to my kids about nutrition, or he might be trying to sell me another box of Cheerios or what have you. So there will be marketing opportunities. We've already seen games come about using this technology. First one was, for those of you in the room who remember, Rock'em Sock'em Robots, was done in a 3D view like this. But let's look at some useful cases. So I get off the plane in Tokyo, and in Japanese, I know how to say hello and beer in about 20 different languages because I find people are friendly when I travel the world if I know those 2 words. But if I get off the plane in Tokyo and I have no idea how to read Japanese and I need to get to my hotel and I'm driving, why shouldn't I just be able to point my phone at it and have it translate the English right in front of it? Or when I go downtown in Tokyo for dinner that night, why shouldn't I be able to just point my phone around me and have it realize things in my environment? And this is kind of taking it to the extreme, but your phone is going to walk in with you to your house and it's going to discover everything that's there. And your house is going to know that's you walking in. So it's going to give you your phone messages, and it's going to set the thermostat the way you like it. That'll be an interesting battle now between phones rather than people on the thermostat. But the idea is that everything from your healthcare to anything that's around you in your environment will become, it'll have a sensor implanted in it, and your phone is going to be able to discover it and interact. We call it a digital sixth sense. Wireless Reach is a set of projects that we have now 84 in 33 countries, and they're neither philanthropy or marketing, because each of those requires sustained funding to be successful. So the Fisher Friend application that you saw the gentleman from India talking about, one thing that he didn't talk about in that application, which is now commercial on Tata's network in India, is that it also allows them to look at the various places in port where they can take their catch and determine what price is being paid. Because what they did before is they'd all flood the same market and drive the price down for their catch. Now, as they're rowing back in or using that makeshift motor, they can check which place is offering the highest price and therefore probably the least crowded, and it's improved the amount of money that they get for each one of their catches. So again, these little, and that was a Wireless Reach project for us. Healthcare, we have a number in healthcare. So, you imagine today you go to the doctor once a year if you're good to get a physical, and other than that, when do you go? It's when you don't feel well. What if your phone could be talking to sensors on you, maybe someday in you, that actually could alert you to some condition you might have? So for example, there are doctors that are looking at prior to somebody having a heart attack, there are apparently cells that start sloughing off from your arteries about 2 weeks before. So imagine getting a text from your phone saying, get to the doctor, you got some cells sloughing off and you want to go and prevent that heart attack. That's the world that we see coming with this technology. So now let me talk about education. Pretty similar pictures there from 1900 all the way up to 2000 and beyond in terms of how we've done education. And a quote from the Secretary of Education in 2010, most young people can't remember a time without the internet, but most learning experiences in school don't match that reality outside. We have to bridge the gap. I remember I got to use a computer my sophomore year in high school, and there was a gentleman in my class who placed out, not because he could do anything useful with it, but he got it playing the theme song from MASH within 10 minutes, and he placed out of the class. So hardly useful at that point in time, but we recognized that these were going to be important. So, I look at what we did to our kids for so long, and I'm so happy to finally see it stopping, but we've been so worried, and you think about how fortunate we are to live in the country we live in, and still our ratio of students to computers in the school is very low. So I kind of laugh that for years we told our kids to turn their computers off when they got to school. It was called their cell phone. Oh, and by the way, I forgot when I started talking, I'd been asked to have you all make sure you take out your phones and turn them on, because it's the happiest sound that I hear in my life being in the industry. I'm the only guy that will come here and tell you to leave your ringers on when I'm speaking. It's a happy sound. But this project for us in North Carolina, we took an algebra class, same teacher. We gave one of her classes smartphones and the other got nothing. This was in an at-risk school district with no computers in the school, no computers at home, no parent that was able to help this child with algebra. The smartphone class increased their proficiency rate 30% on the state exam. And so the neatest part of that experiment that we saw was the piece we didn't expect. We knew they'd go on algebra.com. We knew the teacher would be able to interact with them through the phone. But there was a young man who had to be homeschooled for a few months. And I forget whether it was from an illness or something happened. And he was the best in math in the class, so actually maybe not the most popular kid before. But he started posting videos of himself on a blog that the students created for the classroom, solving the problems. So he was helping his fellow students where his parents couldn't and the other kids didn't have access to computers at home. So that social networking that occurred to enable learning to happen outside the classroom where the kids were helping each other. That's why I'm a big believer homework shouldn't be graded. I'm putting in the plug for all of you while I'm here. Homework's where you do your learning, testing's where you determine whether you've learned. It's really about enabling this personalized education. And I was sharing before, we now know where your phone is. So we can geofence this school. So when the phone enters the geofence that's this school, we can enable certain things to be on and certain things to be off. So it's not about this issue anymore of, well, I'm worried my kid's just going to send texts all day. We can absolutely have the phone act a certain way now within a geofence. So wonderful opportunities. Let me show you a video that
It's more fun to go to school now with the phone. My favorite subject is English. I go to Nanchao Primary School. I'm 9 years old. This is a phone that the school lent me so that I can have more fun learning. I use my phone to learn new words, read stories, take photos, and do math. The phone provides us with more interesting learning. My parents like it when I use the phone for homework. Sometimes I show my mom what I did on the phone and she will say that it's very interesting. When I didn't have a phone, the learning was quite boring. I wish that every student in Singapore would have a phone like this. My name is Wayne and I was born and raised in Singapore.
So for Project K-NECT in North Carolina, when it was completed, more than 85% of the students that participated felt better about their skills in math, and more than 50% when surveyed said they would consider some sort of career that utilized math in it. So the results are there. We need to figure out how to leverage this great and relatively inexpensive technology. I'll leave you with one last slide. And they're both kind of challenges and opportunities in and of themselves. We as Qualcomm cannot find enough engineers in the United States to hire. We cannot. It's absolutely incredible. And there is an incredible competition among companies. I will only tell you, we have hundreds of students on our campus every summer. And I don't give the number because it's actually so competitive, I don't want people knowing how many we have. But there is a real competition that goes on to encourage these kids to come to your company. It's why us high technology companies are doing very creative things like free food and all the other things that we do from a lifestyle standpoint to encourage these kids to come and work for our companies. So, first thing, wonderful opportunities in science and math if you choose that as a course to study from a career standpoint, and especially in this tough economic environment. You have an industry here that's paying premium dollar for careers right now to get people there because we can't find enough of them. The second problem, our country doesn't allow enough foreign students to stay in the U.S. after they use our university system. So what happens is, in the old days, this isn't new, but what happened in the old days was a student would come and use our university system from another country and they'd be sent back home, but they'd work for a U.S. company. The problem now is they're starting their own. So our country is doing a spectacular job educating our future competitors. So we really need to let people who want to stay in this country and contribute, we need to let them stay. Our immigration policy is stuck in 1900, and it needs to move forward to now. This is one of my pleas that, when you go to the voting booth, the offshore balances of technology companies get pitched as offshoring of jobs. 70% of our employees are in the United States. We have a problem with our tax code. Every other country has a territorial system so that you're only taxed on your sales in country. Qualcomm sells virtually nothing in the United States, so our foundry partners are offshore. We sell the chips offshore. That's the foreign cash. If we bring it back, we pay 35% tax on it. A company from China that comes to the U.S. to set up shop, or from Japan, or from anywhere else in the world, can bring dollar for dollar in. We would only be allowed to bring in 65 cents. So the U.S. needs to get competitive. Anybody that tells you that it's labor costs that drove manufacturing out of the United States, it's baloney. Labor costs in a high-tech factory is a rounding error. It is our tax code that has unfortunately left us in the situation we find ourselves. So we want to be able to repatriate that cash, or better yet, have a tax structure that allows it to be here, because we'd invest more in research and development, we'd hire more people. And then for the ladies in the room, engineering is still very male-dominated. Just some incredible statistics to me. The percent of undergraduate engineering degrees going to women is about 18%. And when you consider that environmental is 44% and biomedical is 37%, computer science is 10.5%. But at the schools and MIT actually has probably the closest ratio. It's almost 50-50 women-men, but you'd kind of expect that at MIT based on what they do. But at universities where it's not that evenly matched, where you look at the top 5% of the class, it's about 50-50 men-women. So we need to dispel the thing that only men are good at that and women aren't good at that. We really need you ladies to go into the computer science as well, and you'd ask why. Well, it's the same reason you want a diverse workforce. They looked at a company building electric cars, and when they survey the male engineers, what do you think they want the electric car to do? Go as fast as it can and go 0 to 60 as fast as it can. And the women that were at the company were looking at safety and reliability. So the point is, we need a well-rounded engineering base so that we create products that half the world or more than will actually use. So I really want to encourage you. I was joking, my sister Janet might have been the more appropriate presenter tonight. She went here, was the first female physics major to graduate from Lehigh, got a master's in electrical engineering, a master's in computer science, and that was in the 70s, so she was really in a male-dominated world. But I'd really like to encourage you to consider a career in engineering or science and math. It is a wide open field for you, everyone, and in particular women, based on how disproportionately male it remains today. So thank you very much for having me. It's really an honor to be back in Mendham, and I got my dinner at Sammy's last night, so.
There's a lot there. We started off talking about, the changes and that was able to put a little bit of definition and form to it. When you look at just some of the things that we see, and again, this isn't 10 years from now or 20 years from now. It's now. This mobile wave is occurring at the moment. So I couldn't help but think while I'm watching that, what kind of jobs will this lead to? And we don't know what those jobs are necessarily because things are changing so fast. So the next question is, how do we prepare students for jobs that haven't been created yet? But we do know that this is in this field where engineering is part of it, and these types of things, certainly with computer technology. So that's something for us to consider. But if so much is now going to be reliant on innovation skills and entrepreneurial skills, creative problem solving, certainly this is important skill will be coding, to know how to code. And so we played this video, I think code.org put this out within 3 days. It had 7 million hits on YouTube, and actually a student who's sitting in the audience here said, hey, you might want to look at this, and we ended up showing it at a board meeting. I think it follows an important theme.
I was 13 when I first got access to a computer.
My parents bought me a Macintosh in 1984 when I was 8 years old.
I was in 6th grade.
I learned to code in college.
Freshman year, first semester, intro to computer science.
I wrote a program to play tic-tac-toe.
I think it was pretty humble beginnings. I think the first program I wrote asked things like, what's your favorite color? Or how old are you?
I first learned how to make a green circle and a red square appear on the screen.
The first time I actually had something come up and say, hello world, and I made a computer do that. It was just astonishing.
Learning how to program didn't start off as wanting to learn all of computer science or trying to master this discipline or anything like that. It just started off because I wanted to do this one simple thing. I wanted to make something that was fun for myself and my sisters. And I wrote this little program and then basically just added a little bit to it. And then when I needed to learn something new, I looked it up either in a book or on the internet and then added a little bit to it.
It's really not unlike kind of playing an instrument or something or playing a sport. It starts out being very intimidating, but you kind of get the hang of it over time.
Coding is something that can be learned, and I know it can be intimidating. A lot of things are intimidating, but what isn't?
A lot of the coding that people do is actually fairly simple. It's more about the process of breaking down problems than sort of coming up with complicated algorithms as people traditionally think about it.
You don't have to be a genius to know how to code. You need to be determined.
Addition, subtraction, that's about it.
You should probably know your multiplication tables.
You don't have to be a genius to code. Do you have to be a genius to read?
Even if you want to become a race car driver or play baseball or build a house, all of these things have been turned upside down by software.
What it is, computers are everywhere. You want to work in agriculture? Do you want to work in entertainment? Do you want to work in manufacturing? It's just all over.
Here we are, 2013. We all depend on technology to communicate, to bank, information, and none of us know how to read and write code.
When I was in school, I was in this after-school group called the Whiz Kids. And when people found out, they laughed at me and, all these things. And I'm like, man, I don't care. I think it's cool. And, I'm learning a lot. And some of my friends have jobs.
Our policy is literally to hire as many talented engineers as we can find. The whole limit in the system is just that there just aren't enough people who are trained and have these skills today.
To get the very best people, we try to make the office as awesome as possible.
We have a fantastic chef.
Free food.
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Free laundry.
Snacks. Even places to play and video games and scooters. There's all these kind of interesting things around the office and places where people can play or relax or go to think or play music or be creative.
Whether you're trying to make a lot of money or whether you just want to change the world, computer programming is an incredibly empowering skill to learn.
I think if someone had told me that software is really about humanity, that it's really about helping people by using computer technology, it would have changed my outlook a lot earlier.
To be able to actually come up with an idea and then see it in your hands and then be able to press a button and have it be in millions of people's hands. I mean, I think we're the first generation in the world that's really ever had that kind of experience.
Just to think that, I mean, you can start something in your college dorm room and you can have a set of people who haven't built a big company before come together and build something that 1 billion people use as part of their daily lives is just crazy to think about, right? It's humbling and it's amazing.
The programmers of tomorrow are the wizards of the future. You know, you're going to look like you have magic powers compared to everybody else.
I think it's amazing. I think it's the closest thing we have to a superpower.
Great coders are today's rock stars. That's it.
So if you know how to code, you of course will need to be innovative, and I think in all these areas, innovation it's a skill, and maybe it is part DNA. I don't know, but certainly it's something we can learn. We're very lucky. Jonathan Rochelle is here. He's a senior product manager at Google's NY New York City office. He's primarily responsible for the development of Google Docs and the Google Apps product suite. Prior to joining Google, Mr. Rochelle co-founded 2 companies, ITK Solutions, a Wall Street-based consulting firm, and 2 Web Technologies, a software company, in part responsible for the technology behind spreadsheets in Google Docs. Mr. Rochelle has 16 years of experience as software engineer and applications development manager at JP Morgan, a company working in a broad range of businesses. Of course, he holds a degree in computer science. All right, please welcome Jonathan Rochelle.
Thank you. Thanks. It's great to be here. Just get my machine set up. I am working at Google. I'm from Google, but I'm not here to talk about Google. I'm here to talk about Qualcomm. No, I'm not here to talk about Qualcomm. Bill is, I was going to say, Bill is going to be like, yeah. No, I'm here to talk about innovation. And, oh, there's my screensaver. I'm not here to talk about screensavers. So, innovation, as you've seen, is behind so many things. And I think we are all here really to talk about what it's going to take to learn and teach innovation. So I'll talk about the importance of innovation, what it is, why we need it, and what skills we need to teach, or at least include in our curriculum to make sure our kids are innovative. So first, just a quick background. I'm Jonathan Rochelle. A lot of people know me as JR. Even my wife calls me JR at home. I'm a product manager at Google. That's, really what I do now. I was an entrepreneur before. How many people here know Google Docs, even know what it is? Oh, that's actually really good. When I come to talk to schools, I think I get a much better response there. When I talk to people that are in industry, I'm starting to get even more response than I used to. But in schools, Google Docs really is a product that people relate to. And it lets people work together and work easily. That's my product. That's the product that I started back in 2005 with a co-founder, a small company that was bought by Google. And that's why I still consider myself an entrepreneur, even though I've been at Google almost 8 years, large company. I went to a state school. I love hearing things like Stevens Tech is one of the great, schools. I went to a New York state school, but I'm proud of that fact because I believe that a good education can come from anywhere. I think the kids that come out of this high school, like go to awesome schools, really awesome schools, have a better shot, but you can do it from anywhere, and that's absolutely true. I'm a tech geek. I love technology. I'm a creator. I love creating anything, and I'm an optimist. I believe anything can happen, and I think that's actually one of the skills I'll talk about. I think it's important. I'm also obviously a husband, a brother, a son, an uncle, but most importantly for this forum and why I'm so excited to be able to speak here rather than some of the conferences and things we all do. is that I'm a father to 3 students that in the future will come to this high school. And that's exciting for me to think that I can actually help influence a little bit what we're going to do here. So what is innovation? I didn't bother doing the Wikipedia or dictionary lookup thing. I just kind of wrote this just quickly. For me, it's the creation of an original solution to some problem. So it's cognitive, it's thinking, and creative problem solving. That's why it's important. And why should we innovate? If it solves problems, it can be used anywhere. But not every problem has the right answer. Not every problem can just be a multiple choice 1 through 4, which is the answer. Most problems cannot, as you know. It's also very empowering. People who innovate are empowered. They can do almost anything. They are the superheroes. They're world-changing. It could actually change, and I put world in quotes because it's just your world. It doesn't have to be literally the world. It can just be a very small world. It can be the office you work in, or the classroom, or the home. And it's fun, it's interesting, it's motivating. Innovation sparks energy and motivates people. And, you know, most importantly, I think, life is not predictable. And that's why innovation matters. Because to solve problems that life presents you requires innovation. They're useful everywhere. And we heard a lot from Bill and even in the videos. Everywhere. Technology is there too. So how do we learn to innovate? It's not by memorizing answers, but it's by trying many answers. Right? It's not by fearing and avoiding failure, which is what we typically do as humans. The path of least resistance and the fear of failure sometimes protect us. But it's by actually failing and learning from it. And it's not by staying in our comfort zone, but by doing things we've never done. And that's actually one of the most important concepts and skills that I think we need to teach and execute, which is trying things. And it's not by following the rules, right? It's by making the rules. It's by making new things. And technology seems to be at the heart of what we're talking about tonight. It's typically something that's really important within the curriculum of other subjects because it can help you learn faster and more effectively. And it's typically an actual subject of the curriculum. Technology. But does it equal innovation? Is that what we're talking about with innovation? No, it's not. But technology is a tool. It's a medium. It's interesting and relevant to children, to us, to most people today. It's a building block, like the wheel was. And it's everywhere. So let's talk about the skills which help us innovate, and that's what I'm really going to focus on mostly. Creativity, optimism, passion, opinion, decisiveness, experimentation, all these things. And that's what I'm going to go into very quickly in the next few slides. So a whole bunch of things to be. Things we should be when we come out of school, when we go to our jobs. Being creative, I think, is the most important. To think that you can do anything. Painting, music, building snowmen and sandcastles. I like to use those as examples because you can practice this, you know, even when you're just sitting on the beach, right? Create a sandcastle. And one of the most important things that we'll also talk about a little more is the fact that these things can be washed away, right? The snow's going to melt, the sandcastle's going to get washed away. It's okay. What did you learned maybe how to make it a different way. And it's just practice of being creative. Be an optimist. Expect that you can actually achieve something. Otherwise, you'll never try. You might not actually achieve it, but you might as well think you can. And encourage every idea. Every idea could be a good idea. Set a very high bar, though. Don't love every idea. Just love the best ones. But encourage everyone. And be passionate. Invest your time in things you enjoy to do. And this is something that's really hard, I think. The pressure of getting the best job is really intense. And people sometimes, students, get led towards things that are potentially worthwhile careers, but not the career for them. And I think we have to teach kids to look early, especially in school. Look for things. Try everything till you find something you love. So besides all those things you need to do, right? You need to learn your math, and you need to read, and you need to do all these things. Find things that you can do that you love. At Google, just an example, we have this thing called 20% time you might have heard of. It's, fairly broadly publicized. Every engineer at Google is allowed to spend 1 day a week on something they love to do. It's relevant to our industry or our work or something most of the time. But it gives them that extra spark to do something that they love, and in so many cases, that has become something that's really powerful for our company or for the world. And we've seen some incredible things come out of it. Be opinionated, learning to take a stand, have beliefs, use your experience and the data that you see, but recognize those credible challenges and recalibrate. But learn from what you see and what you experience and what other people have experienced and form an opinion. Being decisive, I would say, is probably one of the most important things, at least I try to teach to product managers. Making that decision. You can go left or you can go right. Should you wait until you know which way to go? Not necessarily. Pick an answer. And if you have to, because it's probably more important to make that decision than making the right decision, you recalibrate. You go the other way if you have to. But at least you'll learn quickly that you made the wrong decision and you go back. I would say this by far is the most critical cultural element at innovative companies, at Google, in our school system, and that's about being a scientist, about experimenting. Taking a shot, right? Trying something. And then measuring results and iterating. So this is the only time I promise that I'm going to plug my kids. I love the science fair. The Chester Science Fair is the most amazing thing to walk through. How many of you have attended or go to the Chester Science Fair? It's really incredible. And there's probably, I'm not familiar enough with the Mendham High School system yet. I will be in 2 years. But it's incredible. We need to really generate as much of that as possible, that energy. It's experimentation energy. Kids are trying things. I think we had 450 kids over something like 380 projects or something this year. But it's exciting, and it teaches kids to experiment at kindergarten age all the way through to 8th grade and then continuously, hopefully, here. Experimenting, and this is really just a slide that I read because it's something that you want to try to absorb. It allows you to learn and discover. If you experiment, you do learn. And that's what fosters innovation, improvement, invention. But most importantly, it teaches you to take risks, to make decisions, and to accept failure. That's what experimentation is about. And those are necessary ingredients for achievement. You have to do those things to achieve. You'll never achieve something if you're not willing to fail. So without experimenting, basically, if you say, I'm not going to experiment because I'm afraid I'm going to fail, you're going to basically set an expectation for perfection. And we all know, especially the parents and the students in the room, that that's actually the pressure that's uncomfortable. That expectation of perfection. That don't try it if you don't think it's going to work. Do not go there if you don't think it's going to work. I believe that's the wrong attitude. And if you expect that and you never experiment, you basically get the status quo. Nothing will change. And be ambitious. Don't experiment on small things only. Try something really big. And so aiming high is something that we really value at Google. And that's something, I use 2 examples here. Self-driving cars is a clear example. I mean, this is something that is shockingly advanced at this point. People are like, in the future, cars might drive themselves. No, not in the future, today. In California, the laws were changed, in at least areas of California. Laws were changed to allow self-driving cars on the road. And the only time that car there, that self-driving car that was developed at Google, got into an accident is when somebody was actually driving it. So it's here. It's not the future. The things that Bill was showing, they're so impactful. So many of them are here. They're not necessarily on all our phones yet, but they're here. They work today. Google Glass is another one. How many people have seen Google Glass? Has anybody seen one live? Seen somebody walking around with one? Of course, Erica has. I have a few people on my team that have them. And it's awkward at best, I'll tell you. It is, you see them, you're talking to them, they're going like this. I'm like, what are you doing? They're like, I'm dog fooding Google Glass. And dog fooding means, you eat your own dog food. We're testing it. But a lot of people in the New York office, Google has a big New York office now, that's where I work, are testing Google Glass. And it's not actually about that specific product. It's about trying it out in real life. And so one person on the team is afraid to wear it outside, right? He's actually afraid somebody's going to steal it off his head. And, it's a fairly expensive device that people probably want to reverse engineer. And then there's a woman on the team, woman engineer, thankfully, that wears it boldly everywhere. I think people have asked her to remove it when she goes into the ladies' room, though. So it does. All you need to say is take a picture, and it takes a picture. It's not really that cool. So, but being ambitious, those things will lead to other things. The inventions that we saw in Bill's presentation, I mean, these are amazing things. But imagine 20 years later, we have no idea what's going to be innovative. We just don't know. Some of them will be positive, and some of them we probably will think is negative. Just like people, look at technology, and there are negative sides. There are people that, there's a lot of concern about what it brings. Being honest is also really important. When you're experimenting and when you're trying things, you have to be honest about the result. Are you happy with that result or not? Don't get yourself locked into what you wanted to happen and self-fulfill. Well, it was sort of successful, I think it was. But if you're honest with yourself and your team about results and about failure, you can learn from it. And most importantly, be honest with other people. Share what you've learned, and so that the next person can get the step further. And that's the thing that happens really in our industry, right? Based on the chipsets that are made by somebody, then we can make the other things. And based on the touch screen, then we can make the other thing. And everything just keeps advancing. And it's just so much easier to create great things and go the next step. And being curious, obviously. Researching is the way you find out, well, what have people learned? And that's a really important connection we need to make in schools. Research is important. We're not saying research is not important. And knowing credible sources is important. I love these commercials recently where people turn to each other. Oh, I read that on the internet. They're all confident. Isn't it great? It's like, yeah, okay. And so you want to learn everything that everybody else has learned. And there's so much there, obviously, that's not always possible. This is the hardest one to accept, like I said. Being a failure. We have to teach our children to fail. And fail gracefully. And not be concerned about revealing the fact that they failed, but rather celebrate it as something they learned. If you're not failing, you're not experimenting. But fail fast. Don't hide it. Because the faster you fail, the faster you'll gain insight. And the faster you'll learn. And that's really the difference between something happening and something not. And I think for especially children to understand that concept of failing, that means you have to be you. You take advice, right? Bill had great advice. I have mediocre advice. Take it all, right? Take it. That doesn't mean follow it. Following it means you're not adding your intelligence. Right? So that's the important thing, is to apply your intelligence, your objectives, situation, opinion, passion. The part that I said was, unpredictable. You want to make sure that you are adding something to that mix. You're not just taking what was there. And that's how you innovate. So how will we teach innovation? What are we going to do in this school, in every school, to teach innovation? Is it standardized testing and memorizing facts? I see my children have always been really good at vocabulary. They memorize, words, and that's actually really important because you're really just going to repeat them and write them, and you need to know, what they look like. But is that how we teach innovation? Or is it creativity and experimentation and independence and teamwork, working together and alone, and having that autonomy to do it yourself, and especially that creativity side, through art, music, science, technology, and sports even? Right, we saw the basketball player. Ironically, sports, I believe, is actually the place where you learn responsiveness to the unpredictable. Within a split second, you've got the ball and you're faced with two defenders and, you're doing something that you never did before. Never. That exact moment has never happened before. It's close, but you can innovate right there. But it teaches you to respond. And technology is more obvious. Science. And music and art, the creativity side is really important. We heard in the Code.org video people talking about how it's magic when you can create something that 1 billion people use, or something that nobody's seen before, or be a magician. You can do that with art too. You can do that with food. You can create an incredible dish, right? And people have never seen it before. And programming, right? Not just sports and art, programming, and that's what we've been talking about, of course, which is why I kind of lead to that. I think programming for me is functional art. It is art. The reason I was attracted to it, and I'll never forget the moment in 11th grade, that's why I relate so much to the Code.org thing. I love programming. I still do it. I'm not that good at it, but I still do it. And for me, it lets me create something that nobody has ever created before, but it's functional. It works. It actually does something. So it's creative, it's accessible, it's relevant everywhere, as you heard. It's empowering. But it's not, we're not teaching it because everybody should be a programmer. It's because it's relevant everywhere and it actually might be fun. And most importantly, it might uncover, somebody like me who just happens to love it. But if you don't try it, you'll never know. And I would say every child should at least try it. It should be a required thing just like art, music, sports, and other things. It should be something that you at least try and see. So teaching innovation, I believe, also requires us to be innovative. We're going to have to do something different. And that's what I'll leave you with. Thank you.
So what I couldn't help but think, while JR was speaking, how thankful I am that this is being videotaped, because there's so much there. And I mentioned earlier that we redesigned and overhauled our curriculum earlier in the year, and just this week we're talking about what are our next steps to that, and of course there's a lot there that we can include and we'll be talking about. It's very critical to me as we address these issues that we do this as a community, because there's big things here and we want to improve by leaps and bounds, and that takes a community effort, and there's such wisdom within the community. We put together this panel, knowledgeable panel, and let me just introduce these community members quickly, and then I'll get to some questions. We have Dr. Kristen Turner, who's professor at Fordham University, he's Chester resident, and is working with the school district presently, investigating digital literacy. Connor Monahan is a graduate of Mendham High School, a game designer, went to Rochester Institute of Technology and is graduating and just got a job at Microsoft. Congratulations. And Stephen Santos, who is a Washington Township resident, also a graduate and director of information technology, Johnson & Johnson, and a Mendham resident, Barry Haynes, who's coordinating supervisor of district technology in the Parsippany Troy Hills School District. Thank you very much for volunteering your time and for being here. So I'd just like to start with one simple question, and Steve, maybe we could start with you. Just from what you heard this morning, just now, these presentations this evening, what was the one or two things that struck you most?
So for me, it's, I have an opportunity to work at a company that is over 125 years old and started on the innovative notion of sterilizing cotton for aseptic procedures. And one of the things that, strikes me the most in hearing this presentation, one of the things I fear is when a team member says, no, we can't do that, or no, I don't want to try and do that. And we've lost that innovative spirit and that innovative drive. And one of the things, whether it's my own kids or members of my team, that I try to stress is there's nothing that we shouldn't try. We may not always get the result that we're looking for, but we may get something else. We may get something better. We may get something that we didn't expect. So I think that whole concept of, I think the last comment was fast failure, or getting to failure relatively quickly. So what if we fail? We've tried it. We move on, we do something different. I think that's key in helping us to develop our students and professionals to be more effective at what they do. As soon as we lose that ability, as soon as we have people who are telling us that, no, we don't want to do that, I think that's just a tragic loss in our society as well as in our workplace.
Thank you. Dr. Turner?
I have been in the field of education for 15 years. I have taught preschoolers through graduate students, and preschool does something right. They let kids experiment, play, and fail gracefully. And I think what struck me most about the talks right now is really about failure, and whether we ask our kids to experiment and fail gracefully and learn from their failures. And Jonathan, I think you hit the nail on the head with, do we do that through standardized testing or not? There are certain things that we have to deal with in life. Standardized testing is one of them, but it doesn't need to drive everything that we do. And we need to think about how technology and coding and all of the new literacies of the world are going to affect us in the real world, and work toward that.
Mr. Monahan?
Well, I'll look at both of them because I thought both presentations were awesome. But the one thing I took away from Bill's talk was definitely about mobile. I have my phone with me up here, but for so much of everything that guys I work with and students I go to school with, so much of what they do is focused around mobile technology. And you know, for me, working in games, back in the day, it was arcades, and then that kind of lost some steam, and it was computers, and then that kind of lost steam, and it was consoles, and now it's phones. And more we have to adapt to that kind of mobile technology and figure out how do we leverage that better. And then when John was talking, being innovative and being creative and breaking the rules. For me, when I was a kid, I played with Legos a lot of Legos. And I feel bad because my parents would take time to find the best ones for me, and I never read a single instruction manual for Legos. I just threw them out, and I just used them for scrap, you know? And just trying to, you know, like you said, break the rules and make your own rules. Definitely, I think it's totally necessary when you're looking at trying to make new ideas, is just ignore the old ideas.
Thank you. Mr. Haynes.
So I'm going to respond to some other things that the panelists said. It's kind of fun being up here. So what Steve said, we had an Apple professional development provider in our district working with a bunch of people the last couple of weeks, and one of the things he kept stressing was, you can comment, but you can't say yes but. It can never be yes but. It has to be yes and. You need to be an additive. So it goes back to that theme. And to Kristen, I think it's interesting for us as educators to look at the classroom and think about failure in the classroom and how to help our students. But even in our positions as educators, when I approach a district and we have a large department in Parsippany, we fail and we learn a lot from that failure. And so I think it's even putting it at the adult perspective, allowing ourselves in school districts to sometimes get it wrong, because through that we grow and we get better at it, and education becomes better because of it. And for Connor, who I'm really proud of because he used to be a student of mine. I couldn't help but say it. Okay. So
fifth grade,
right. I was the one who stopped him from playing games. See what happened to you? It was good. So it's a story that builds on a lot of themes that I heard. That was a crystallizing story for me. So a couple of years ago, we took a group of teachers to Morristown High School, where the Latin teacher was using a classroom set of iPads, or maybe it was like 6 or 7 iPads. And we went in as a group of teachers and we were talking to him. And after about 15 minutes, I became embarrassed because we were taking up all of his time. And I'm looking at the students and they're gathered around these iPads doing stuff. And I look at him and I'd say, you know, I'm really sorry we're taking up your instructional time. And he kind of looks at me really surprised and says, what do you mean? And I says, you should be in front of your students teaching, right? And he goes, no. Why should I presume that I'm the expert in the classroom when in front of them they have 2,000 years of human history and the best world libraries that there are? I'm not the expert in the classroom. My best role can be to nurture and to help them and to learn how to become experts, to become lifelong learners, but I'm not the expert. And that was a crystallizing event because that's what mobility brings to our classrooms, and that's how education changes.
Thank you. If I could direct this just question quickly to Connor Monahan. Just congratulations, recently got a job at Microsoft, and I guess I don't want to embarrass you too much or put you on the spot, but what did Microsoft see in you? What was it about your skill set?
Same thing I saw.
You'll have to ask them. I have absolutely no idea. No, I think there's a lot of different things, but I'm so glad that you guys found the code.org because that was one of the huge things for me. Was before I went to RIT, I had never programmed or coded before, and so from my role is more of a creative one, and I think that out of the people that I competed with for that position, I have the ability to program, and I try to do it as much as I can because it is so it's just unbridled creativity. It's awesome, and so I think beyond my technical ability to do something that other people in my role can't do is what I would say is a good communication ability to be able to communicate abstract ideas in a very coherent manner so that other people understand where you're going to. And just doing that in a team setting. A lot of the people that I go to school with, they're really strong engineers, brilliant mathematicians, and a lot of them can't put 2 words together. And I think that one of the really important things, and I'm so glad that I took the time here at the high school to take a public speaking course with Ms. Turner, was to have that ability to communicate everything that you have inside your head. And I think that one of the things that puts me above is, I guess, getting across to people in a real way. So I think that's probably what they connected with, and that's I think why they're bringing back there.
Well said, I should say, I guess. So I think one of the themes that I definitely have seen, I think through all the different presentations, it's just the total school experience too, how important sports and creativity and the arts and in other areas. And then, of course, communication. It's something we talk a lot about in the school system. And, of course, that starts with the ability to read and comprehend and then to express with great clarity in writing and also with words. So let me take advantage of the moment, Dr. Turner, and turn to you. Dr. Turner's, she's doing some research both at Fordham but within our own school district, exploring this concept of digital literacy. It's interesting, and we're exploring it in both pre-event surveys and post-event surveys. How is this Mobilism impacting our students' reading? And so I want to throw this to you, and if you could just talk about some of your research to the audience.
Sure. So the term digital literacy has two words in it, digital and literacy. And it's not just about the technology being added into what we think of as traditional literacy, which would be reading and writing. So how many of you have sitting on your bedstand a print book? I do. And then how many of you also have somewhere sitting near your bed an iPad or some kind of device? And how many of you have both of those things? We are in this world that is so wonderful to live in. It's on the cusp of magnificent change, and a lot of us have feet in both worlds, and our children are certainly growing up with feet in both worlds. They need to learn how to read print, and they need to learn how to read digitally, because more and more of our texts are becoming digital texts. And those are not the same kinds of reading that we do. So when we're reading digital text, we can link to all kinds of information. As you mentioned, we have all of human history at our fingertips. And as Jonathan mentioned in his presentation, we can't just say, well, I read it on the internet and therefore it's true. So there's some critical thinking that has to go into reading and analyzing the sources that you're getting off the internet. So these are all skills of literacy in the 21st century. And the work that I'm doing here in the district is talking to the teenagers about what are they reading digitally. Are they reading on their smartphones? Are they reading on their iPads, their Kindles? Are they reading fan fiction, short stories, texts, tweets, all of these different kinds of texts, and how are they reading them? Are they getting critical when they look at these kinds of texts? And so part of the research is really just identifying what are our students doing, and then thinking about, well, how can we in the classroom support them a little bit better in their digital reading as well as their print reading. So 2 feet, one on either side of what we might consider a digital divide. So that's the work that we're going to be doing in the district, and I'm really excited to be working with the students here.
And we're so lucky to have you, and to take from JR, we're experimenting, I suppose. We're being scientists and researching. So let me go to another question for everybody. And we've heard about creativity and innovation and breaking the rules and how important that is. So let's put that aside for a second, and just given what you do right now in your jobs, and keep this in context that so much of our students will be graduating. Of course, it's we mentioned earlier, an internationally competitive world, and our students have to compete with students throughout the world. Maybe I'm giving an answer, I don't know, but given your background, what knowledge or skills do you feel are essential for our students to learn in high school to compete in this new era, Steve?
I love the code.org video. On any given day, when someone comes in and is working with me, whether they're new in our organization or have been there for a long time, I can teach them the technology. I can teach them about the business that we have to support. What I can't teach them is the ability to think analytically, to break a problem down into components and figure out how to solve that. And so I stress the components of critical thinking and coding as a supporting technology to teach that. That's what I think is most important. Someone approached me not too long ago and said, I've got a high school seniors getting ready to go to college, and I'd like to know what languages they should learn to program. And I said it's irrelevant. Have them learn any language that they find interesting and that they can be passionate about, so that they spend some time at it and they use it as a tool to build those creative thinking skills, and to look at problems in a variety of different ways, so that they're not stuck in a single approach and only being able to do things in one way. They have to be able to break it down into its component parts and figure out how to solve it.
Thank you. Dr. Carter.
Yes, and thought you'd like that. Collaboration. We live in a world where we can collaborate face-to-face and we can collaborate using digital tools, and we need to learn how to take advantage of both of those atmospheres to work with other people and share with them our failures and our successes to move forward.
I feel angry now because I was going to use collaboration.
Oh, sorry.
Wait, let's collaborate on that.
Yeah, I'm going to build on that. Definitely, collaboration with the internet and all the technology that we have available to us. I think it's opened up a secondary channel coming back towards the author of the information. Now we can kind of consume media, consume information, and in the past that was just kind of it. You took it down and memorized it and came back out later. And I think now we have the opportunity to basically build on it and then return it back to sender and just say, well, here's a new idea and here's what I think is better. And so one of the really awesome things for me as a student is a lot of my teachers at school try to have us, add things to the classes that we're taking and, suggest different projects and that sort of thing. And then in my own work, one of the huge things for games is modifications. And that's content that's generated by the user. And that, spins off into all these other different, products that end up becoming more successful because they're building on someone else's ideas. And that kind of ability, the skill, I guess, would be, the ability to make your own idea heard, to kind of stand up and say, I think this is a great idea and I think it should be considered, is really important to be able to add onto something that's already there and to make it better. So, yeah.
Thank you.
So Connor used the word mod, and it just got me thinking. By show of hands, how many of you, well, let's go with students first. How many of you play Minecraft?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, okay. Okay, hands down. How many of you know what Minecraft is for everybody? Oh, that's really good. Okay. So I'm of this devious mindset that maybe we should have classes at school that allow kids to do Minecraft a little bit, because the problem there's an audience being right. Because I think we underestimate the amount of skill, collaboration, problem solving that is involved in those types of they're not games, right? They're building different environments. Back to the question, though, I think collaboration, teamwork, and problem solving are certainly part of the evening tonight. And another story. So last year in an AP U.S. history class, one of the U.S. history teachers, it's in Parsippany, she had a set of iPads too, not one for every student, but like 7 or 8 in the class. And using iBooks Author, she had them go out and research different themes of the 1980s and 90s. So there was Reaganomics, and there were the scandals of the Clinton era. There are all these different kinds of fun themes. They went out using Google Docs in groups of 4, and they created a document, and they found pictures and libraries to include in that. And they submitted that work to the teacher, who kind of put it into an iBooks Author and created the textbook for the class. After 3 or 4 periods then, each period had their own textbook. And the way they learned the content was to share each other's textbooks. So that to me was a great example of the kind of collaboration and teamwork that our students will need for their future, using Google Docs or whatever, but online collaboration. And the last thing is taking a risk. So again, in Parsippany, we put in 2 iOS labs. So it is computer programming, but now it's learning how to create apps. And that took a lot of hard work, getting the computers, building the labs, all those things, rewriting the curriculum. But that is so important for our students' future, coming back to coding and the kinds of things that we think are important for our students.
So do you think if we had 20% time in school, the students would play Minecraft? Or would they go to the iOS lab and make apps?
That's the best thing about differentiation. I think some students would play Minecraft. I'm not sure everybody would, but I think if there was 20% time, they would come up with some very innovative ways to use that time for whatever kind of innovations that they wanted to do. I think that's it. Yeah, it's a great time.
The collaboration topic itself is fascinating. We had a we have a sales rep who works in Beijing in China, and happened to be talking to a physician who had a patient, and it was a young girl about 9 years old, and she lives in rural China, and rural China is really rural. No hardline telephones, but they did have cellular capability, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with this young girl. And so this doctor came into our sales rep. We're not a technology company. We sell medical devices and medical products. And he said, "Is there anything you can do to help me?" And he said, "I don't know. Let's find out." And was able to give this young woman a mobile device, sent her on her way. But in the process of doing that, they connected her with 4 different physicians around the world. And each one had a unique specialty, and they were diagnosticians who were really looking at what this individual did on a day-to-day basis and when she exhibited symptoms. And it was the collaboration of these 4 doctors who knew very little about one another. They knew very little about their patient, but they were able to share ideas in a collaborative environment and solve the problem. And that little girl went on to, continue to live a healthy life, and they solved her particular issue. I think that type of willingness to look at problems differently and collaborate, even though they've never met one another, they don't have to come together in kind of the traditional forms that we may have seen in the past. I think it's just a fascinating way that we approach collaboration.
Again, the way I was educated, and this is 30 or 40 years ago, and we certainly want to move much more into where students are constructors of knowledge. Yeah. They're constructing it together. They're problem solving. We talk about STEM or engineering. It's not just a class. It's a mindset of creative problem solving and using those skills of collaboration. And it's throughout every discipline. So we talk a lot about science and math and technology, of course, crosses over, but it's in every discipline and in your co-curricular activities as well. And again, a takeaway for me, it just seems like we're not just talking about a class here. We add a class, although a coding class seems to be on the agenda, all right? But we add a class and that's it. No, there's a culture that we need to continue to foster of experimentation and innovation. And our co-curriculars, where a gaming Minecraft club. By the way, Barry, you made my kids very happy tonight. I want you to know that. Yeah. So that's another theme that I hear. So, and I'll just finish with one last question. You could take either one. I guess it's just future oriented. So you can answer either one. I'll ask 2, and whichever one you want to answer. One is, how do you think Mobilism, again, this wave that's currently hitting, how is it going to change your job in these next 5 years? Or if you want to take it another way, because we're talking about education, what's one thing you'd like to see in this mobile era? You'd really like to see the high school. One step you'd really like to see us take. So either question, I know I throw you a little curveball there, but either question, how has your job changed because of Mobilism, or how do you see it changing? Or to finish up, one change you really would love to, or maybe it's not even a change, but a value or an attribute you really would love to make sure that our students experience in the high school?
For me, I think that what I see in my day-to-day job, I have accountability for 18,000 servers inside of J&J, and they're all very traditional, boring applications. Yeah, I'd be happy to give you some. On any given day, 10 or 20 of them don't decide to come to work. What we're finding is we have a lot of information in those computers, in those servers, and we have a very old school, traditional way of going at that information through laptops that we issue to people and say, this is the only thing that you can use to connect to this information. And what we found over the past 2 years is more and more people are coming up to us to say, look, I've got this iPhone. I work in Singapore or India or anywhere else, and being able to spend a couple $1,000s buying a laptop has a significant impact on the budget of my organization. I just want to use my device. Figure out how to take my iPad, my iPhone, whatever commodity device you want to look at, and allow me to access all of the information that you have in your servers through that device. Now, I've been in J&J for 18 years. We're a heavily regulated organization, and we hear that and we cringe. We're like, no, that information's got to be secure and has to be protected, and we have all of these privacy and security guidelines. And they tend to get in the way, and it's only when you step back from that and you start to say, all right, what's the benefit of going to a mobile environment or bring your own device and look at the benefits that are there, then start to figure out, okay, how do I actually enable that? And that is what I think we're on the cusp of being able to do right now with some of the mobile technologies we're seeing, is take a dramatically different way of sharing knowledge, sharing information on a mobile device that has a phenomenal impact on our organization, on a fairly old corporate entity.
Thank you.
So I don't know if you remember, but on October 29th, we had a little rain and wind storm here. I was without power for 15 days and without internet for 21 days, and my whole life is about power and internet. And so that was kind of hard, but because of my mobile devices and my 3G, once it got working again after a day and a half, I could stay in touch with my students who live all over the tri-state area. I could collaboratively write with my co-author. We had a deadline of November 1st, and we were finishing up an article that we had written together on Google Docs using Google Hangout, and because of my iPad, I was able to continue contributing to that. So the mobility has allowed me in ways to participate in my job in ways that I never would have been able to do before. Now there's a catch-22 to that, and I'm speaking for any teachers who are in the room here. I'm now 24/7 access to my students, and when you're teaching at the high school level, you're also somewhat 24/7 access to your students' parents. So I plead with you, please don't expect 24/7 access. And I think that that's something we do need to be careful of, because we are only humans in this digital world. That being said, what I think mobility can do for us is bring the outside world in. So school is no longer four walls and a classroom that we sit in. School is everywhere. Learning is everywhere. And we can bring that learning into the classroom in really authentic, fundamental ways that will help our students be competitive in a globalized world. So that's what I hope the school moves towards, so that when my two kindergartners get here, they will want to code and go to Microsoft and be able to do all the things that you've been able to do as well.
I'm glad that you brought up Sandy, because I think that one of the things that I've noticed with Mobilism and the advent of this handheld technology that is so powerful is I have information so quickly that it's kind of scary. When Sandy hit, I was actually at Microsoft doing my internship, and I was out in Seattle. And I remember, reading tweets and Facebook posts and all these other news articles that were coming out regarding the storm and how it was impacting this area locally. And I realized when I would get emails through to my parents in the back of the room, when I would get emails through to them every 3 or 4 days, I realized I actually knew more about what was going on than they did. They had no idea what was going on because, the roads were down, power lines were down, phone lines were down, and the information was just coming to me so much faster, and that just kind of pervades through all of what we do. And I know that for me personally, the way that my job has changed, or at least my education and my career has changed, is everything has to be faster because information is so readily available. Deadlines are a lot harder, because with stuff like Google Docs, which I love. Oh, thank you, John. Thank you. With stuff like Google Docs, me and my boss are working on the same document, so he's, quite, literally looking over my shoulder through the internet, and he knows when I'm not working or when I'm not working fast enough. And so deadlines become harder. You need to move a little bit faster. You need to be more flexible. And I guess the kind of thing that I would look for, to answer your question, Mackie, is in the future, I'd love for, as Bill said, at the beginning of his presentation, to turn your phone on when class starts, not turn it off, because one of the great things about, having the phone here is I have to keep a lot of stuff rattling around up here, and I don't always do a great job of it. And so having the phone at my hands, I can always, pull up some information that I've written down in the past, and I can also show other people stuff that I've done in a more, visual way. And I'm a visual learner, so I would really love to see a classroom environment where we have these mobile devices and we use them more frequently because they are so powerful and they can do the things that we can't do right now. And that sharing of information is so important, and the speed of that information is what makes it so incredible.
Thank you.
And I guess building on this again, back to what Steve said about information on servers, I think the information in the classroom is really interesting now. There's a fun convergence going on between computing and, let's say, the textbook. And for years, we've said in education that the textbook is not the curriculum, and yet the textbook really is kind of curriculum. It's a kind of a dirty secret. So what we're seeing over the next 2 years are statements by Secretary Arne Duncan saying the textbook should be replaced by digital devices in the next couple of years. And now that students have mobile devices and that schools are getting more mobile devices, it gives us the ability to say, well, the textbook isn't the curriculum. It really isn't. And there are open education resources that people are adopting. The state of Utah went to all open education resources. There are commissions like out in California, CK12, that only puts out flip books. And they're not even textbook replacements, but they are open education resources that give you access to information, timely information, right, that students can use to make problem solving immediate based on today's activities. And I find that fascinating because curriculum needs to be rewritten, and what we deliver and the kind of information we use with our students needs to be rethought. So that kind of brings it back to the education mind.
If we could please just give a round of applause for our community presenters tonight. So we want to improve by leaps and bounds because the society, the world demands it today. And we can't do that. We know we can't do that individually. It has to be a community involvement in a community taking steps along the way, every step along the way with the school district. And I think it's important to note that our decisions count. These are things we can control. A good example I heard just the other day in a TED Talk is Korea 3 decades ago had absolutely the worst educational system in the world, one of the lowest standards of living of any culture, society, similar to Afghanistan today. And today, by the standard of the percentage of students who are graduating high school, Korea has the best educational system today on that metric. And that's because of decisions that they made within that country to change things. And so I believe taking a cue from so much of what we heard, we need to believe in that optimism. We need to be innovative and take chances. And we should expect, and this community should demand, that we improve by leaps and bounds. And I think this is certainly a good first step, a great first step. Just so proud to see so many people come out, over 400 people here tonight. And it's very important. Our next steps, this is not just an academic discussion. Although important, the dialogue and the communication critical, but it doesn't end here with just a single discussion. What we have over the next few months is we're going to have some additional meetings with community members, but also a curriculum and program summit within the school system to set strategic objectives, definitive goals that we want to move towards. And obviously, we're going to be reaching out and communicating a lot of things to this community. We have a pre-event survey that we're going to continue to gather data from our students. Again, we look to get feedback from 1,000 students and 1,000 families, use that data. We've been researching this all year, as I mentioned earlier, visiting colleges and other high schools, and we're going to continue to research it. But for the next few months, set those definitive strategic objectives to move forward. Post-event survey will be emailed out within a couple of days. Your feedback is absolutely critical to hear what everyone says about what you heard tonight and what you'd like to see from the school district moving forward. This has to be a community movement going forward if we want to reach those goals. I know everybody here certainly wants to. So we did have some questions texted in, and we will look to answer some of those. Had to do with creating innovation. I don't think I can answer them in the next 3 minutes. But what tablet is best for my child and some of these questions. We'll look to put those up on the internet, and I think I could probably get a greater and a more thoughtful answer from some of our experts. And we'll be putting that on the web, and a lot of this data and our conclusions going out to the community within as the year unfolds. But before I finish, it is a difficult situation that we're in. We do have an educator's paradox, what we call the educator's paradox, because we have increased standardization taking place throughout the country, national curriculum with national testing. And so we have that increased standardization, but at the same time, the world is begging for innovation and collaboration. And so we have to do both, and we will do both. That could be, the best line I heard tonight was, well, everything's intimidating. You know, I love that line. And so it's a great challenge, and I think we can hit home runs with it, and I'm quite confident of that. Before I finish, if I could just thank our presenters, Jonathan Rochelle and Bill Davidson. Again, thank you very much for being here. Our community panel again as well, Steve Santos, Barry Haynes, Dr. Kristen Turner, and Connor Monahan. Thank you again. And congratulations to Mendham TV, who's here, first live show at Mendham TV. Congratulations, thank you. Mike Monahan and Doug Black, thanks for that effort. A tremendous amount of effort went into this by our District Supervisor of Technology Integration, Erica Hartman, and thank you. Administrative assistants, Renee Vaccaro, Debbie McGrath, Karen Swift for all of the work, and to finish off our tech team, Andy Palmer, John McGoldrick, Mike Malone. Thanks very much, everybody. Have a nice night. Thank you very much for participating. Thank you.